All right, great. So now we're back into the next section of the primer, Module B, where we're going to focus on some basic modeling. Um, we have our topography, we have our levels. The one thing I didn't show you guys was saving. It's easy, you just click File, Save. We'll talk about central models in BIM 360 and things like that in a little bit in Module D, but for now, just saving it locally on your computer or on the server is fine. So now that we've got this set up, let's start working on basic modeling of things like floors and so on. So I'm going to go to level 1 because this is where I want to create my floor. And I'm going to just do and start with a generic floor. Within Revit, there's a lot of preloaded things like generic floors and stuff like that. When you're at the early stages of a design project, it's good to just use a generic object that's roughly the thickness of what you're going to need it to be. So, for example, if it's a concrete slab floor, maybe it's 4 inches thick. If it's framed out of 2x12s, maybe it's 12 inches thick. Once you include all the other elements that make it up, you want to get it pretty close to what you think it's going to be. But at the same time, it hasn't really been designed yet. So it's impossible to know what the exact thickness is. So what I want to do here is I want to have like a 4-inch slab on the top of this, and then we'll have a podium foundation underneath. So to start with the floor, I'm going to come to architecture and I'm going to click on floor. And you'll notice that if I go back, hit X, there's a few different options: architectural, structural, by face, and slab edge. We're just going to do an architectural floor for now. And it's going to ask me to sketch out the boundaries of it. So I'm going to click on this line here, and I'm going to just start similar to where that building pad footprint is. I'm just going to start sketching out the extents of this floor. It's generic 12-inch by default, but we're going to change that. So you can sort of set the family first and then draw, or draw and then change the family. So this, 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 this. Same thing. Make sure I've got everything right here. All right, cool. So that's it. And then I'm just going to click that, and I've got my generic 12-inch floor. If I go to a 3D view, there it is. Now, like I had said before, I wanted it to be 4 inches. So there's a few ways I can edit that. The first is by clicking on it and then just coming here and changing it. But I actually don't think there's a generic 4-inch in here. This is a pretty stripped down template. So your next lesson here is how to actually adjust the thickness of these things. I'm going to go to Edit Type, and I'm going to go to Duplicate. Right, so now I have all the type properties about this. We're going to talk more about parameters as we get more and more into this, but this here are all of your instance parameters, which is this exact instance of the object. And then when I click here and go to Edit Type, these are the type parameters. Now I could come in here and edit the structure and change the thickness, but then it would be called 12-inch and it would be different. Right, so we don't want to actually edit this. That would cause a problem because then the family would be inaccurate. So I want to make sure I duplicate it. I'm going to call it generic 4-inch. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to click on Edit the structure. And you know, again, in the generic, it just has a structural boundary in the middle, and we'll look at how you edit these as we go through this. But this right now, let's just call it a 4-inch thick slab. Click OK. I'm going to click, I can click Apply, and you can see it. Well, actually, it doesn't update unless I click OK. So there it is, though. So there's my new 4-inch slab. So that's our first model element besides the topography. So good work, everybody. And, you know, we're going to start now just adding more information to the model, but before we do that, I want to show you guys how to create sections. So modeling in Revit, there's a few different ways to do it. One is by doing it in 3D. So if I go to this 3D actually, and I double click on the floor, I can actually modify this in 3D if I want to. maybe it's because I'm old school, but I like to do it based on plan section elevation, which helps me sort of understand and project things orthogonally. Now, of course, that can't always be the case, especially with complex geometry and things like that. But what I'm going to show you guys is a workflow in which you use plan section elevation in order to do these things. So if I go to level 1, I'm going to draw a section so that I can learn more about this, and maybe I'll draw it through the stair for now. Eventually we'll need that, but right now, just to get it set up, we'll do that. So all I have to do is click up here on section. The other way to do it is by going into view and clicking on section in here, but it's pretty common, so they have it up here. I'm going to click there. I'm going to click and drag this across. And now there's a few ways to get to that. It's actually already created a section for me here, so I can click on that. My favorite way of doing this, if I go back here, is I like to click on this and it'll take me to it. Now, one other thing you'll note is it's actually only showing us the geometry down here, and the building is taller. It's not even showing us level 2. So I'm just going to drag this up, and the grid lines move with it. Or sorry, not level 2, the top of the roof, but now we have the top of the roof. And this is pretty interesting because it shows us the building pad relative to the topography at that location and so on. And so it's a good way to kind of get that. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that in here, the topography is a little funky, and we can go back and fix that later to make sure this whole pad in here is right. So actually, let's go back and do that real quick. I'm going to come here. I'm going to enable my temporary view properties. I'm going to turn on topography. I'm going to come here to wireframe so that my floor is not blocking my CAD. And I'm going to click on my topography, edit the sketch, and I know that, oops, sorry, not edit the sketch. That was the property line. I'll hit Tab, click the topography, edit surface, and why is it not showing me the points? Let me see if I go to 3D. So this is a little bit messy, but that point is at, this is the point of that flat topography where the stair sits, and you can see it's a little bit uneven there. So I can just copy this value. I'm going to go back to level 1, and I'm going to go to Modify Edit Surface, Place Point. I can just paste that value in there, and now I know that all around here, that surface is even. So I can just kind of add a few points in there. Now if I go back to my section, I have a nice flat surface there, right where the building pad hits, because that was where the stair was going to sit. Now the building pad itself is kind of thick. I usually actually like to go in and make these very thin. I like these not to be representational, but just a method to change it. So we can change this to like 0.25 inches. Click OK. And now it's not doing that. Now, if we have to change that, once we put a foundation in and things like that, we can always go do that. But for now, it's not actually representing much thickness. It's just constraining the project to the right height. Okay, so we've got our first floor. Let's start adding some other elements to this. So, and we've got our section as well. So let's go to level 1. And now I've got these walls that are, I think they are travertine walls. I think I can tab into the, maybe not. Thought I could tab in to see what the layer it's on is, but I can't. I think actually no, I can query it and I can click on it. Ah, yes. So this is valuable. So let me go back and let me just re-enable the temporary view properties, make this wireframe, and if I come in here and I click on this and then query it, I can click on this and I can see that this is on Muros, which My Spanish is rusty. It means walls. So it doesn't define exactly what it is. I'm just going to make a wall that is that thickness. So what I'm going to do is come in here, measure this, and this is 685 128ths. That's close enough to 6 1/4-ish for me. I'm just going to call it 6 1/4. And I'm going to come and go to architecture, walls, and I'm going to create a new generic wall. This has a bunch of different ones with thicknesses built in. We can just use the 6-inch wall for now. 1/4 inch is not really going to be a huge difference. Now, here, the important thing is to start to set where you want it to go to. And I'm actually going to escape out so I can get a good reference here. But the top of that wall is actually the top of the roof minus 1 foot 63 128ths. Again, I wish the dimension was a little cleaner. That's really close to 1 1/2. Sorry, 1 foot 1/2 inch. So I'm going to use that. If I go back to level 1, I'm going to click on wall. I'm going to use my 6-inch, and I'm going to set this height not to be unconnected, but to go to the top of the roof. And then I'm going to set the offset to be negative 1 foot 0.5 inches. And so it will now set it to the height that I want it to be, and it'll be constrained to the top of the roof. The last thing is this wall center line, or the location line, is important. I want this to be the finished face exterior, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line to do it, to be my guide. So if I click and start to drag, I'm sorry, my offset there, let me start over. That offset, this was the offset to the, for the wall. I want that to be 0. I want this top offset, this is what I want to be negative 12.5 inches. Okay. And then I've got my finished face exterior. So now when I click and drag this, you see it actually goes over. I can hit spacebar to flip it if it's not in the right spot. And now I can just click and draw all these walls in. Nice and easy. The doors, you're going to go right over them. That wall looks a little bit thin. We'll fix that in a second. And then I can just hit escape out and I can continue drawing the wall. Looks like the exteriors are this dimension. The interiors are different, but we'll fix those. So like I said, you just go right over the doors, hit spacebar. Now, let's just say it's not snapping right. I can do align, boom, boom, AL, and now it's good. And then another shortcut, which, you know, like I promised I wouldn't use, I hit WA and I get wall, and I'm back into my wall drawing and just tracing this all around. That will do at a curtain wall. This. And then this, I think this is that marble interior feature wall, but we'll just keep it as that for now. We can change it later. Okay, so I'm going to come and I'm going to edit these. So if I get a dimension on this, I see that this is closer to 4 1/4, so I'm just going to use 4. I'm going to click there. I'm going to click there. If I hold down Control, I can select them both. I'm going to just change this to a 4-inch wall, which I don't have a generic 4-inch. So rather than do that, I'm going to go to Edit Type, Duplicate. I'm going to call this generic 4-inch. Click OK. Edit the structure, 4 inches. Okay, okay. And now they shrink and they're aligned to the right place. So let's go back to a 3D view, and now I have all my walls sitting on my slab. All right, now to show you the power of Revit, if I go to a left-hand view, this is exactly 1.5 inches below the top of the roof where I told it to go. If I drag this up, it will maintain that relationship. So we'll always stay 1.5 inches below there. So that's why it's important to get your levels height and all that, because then you can start establishing these relationships that remain fixed. Now I can click on that wall and change that if I want to by changing the top offset. And another thing that's important is if I want to select every wall that's connected to that, I can hit tab and get that whole thing. And then I could change this to, 3 feet above, and then it will go up. But if I hit Control Z, undo that, I want to get those levels right. I want to establish those relationships properly, like I said. Okay, so that's walls. Very easy. Walls are probably the easiest. In order to kind of complete this, let's actually do one more wall, which I'm going to do kind of a foundation wall. If I click on wall here and I click on foundation, let's do 12-inch concrete foundation. You notice that by default, it goes down. It'll start at level 1 and go down. My base offset is -12. I actually want this to go down to the ground. And right now, let's just set this as 0. And then my top constraint is up to level 1, but remember that my slab is 4 inches thick. I'm going to show you something you can do to not have to do that so cleanly, but I'm going to just keep this level 1 right now. You're going to see it's going to overlap, but then we'll fix it. So now, same thing, finish face exterior. I'm going to draw this. So now it's not showing it because it's going down below. This always becomes a little tricky. Maybe we'll do it in 3D just so you can see how that would work. So let me go back to the 3D. I can click and draw this. It's not being so cooperative. Depth. You know what? Let's go to the ground plan and do it there. And what I can do to make life easier is I can put an underlay on this, and I can say, let's see level 1 as an underlay. So now, I just noticed that's a little messy. I'll clean that up in a second. Well, you know what? It's going to drive me crazy, so let me do it now. This is an easy fix. I can click on Modify, and I can extend like that. So I click on Extend, I click on where I want to extend to, and then I click the element I want to extend, and it just completes that. So now if I go back to ground, I have the underlay of the level above, which will help me trace the footprint better, right? So here's the floor above that I need to trace. So if I go back to that wall, it remembers the one I had set up. I wanted it to be from the ground up to level 1. I want my base offset to be 0 as well. Let me see, top constraint up to level 1. Okay, sometimes if you click in a weird order, you'll get that because it didn't register that I wanted to change it to level 1 yet. Why is this top constraint isn't valid for the level? Revit doing one of its finicky things that is making things a little complicated. So you know what we'll do? Let's just leave it like this for now, and then I'll show you how to fix it. So I'm going to click and I'm going to draw this. Again, we're getting an error, an issue with not being able to see. So I'm just going to set this to like 1 foot, so at least we can see it. Sometimes you just have to like bully Revit into doing what you want it to do. And now I can trace this foundation. And I'll show you why, like this whole using sections and things like that to model is incredibly helpful. All right, so let's go to the section, and we can see that this wall is really not in the right spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually come back to 3D. I'm going to click on this wall and hit Tab so I can get them all. And I'm going to actually attach the top of this to this floor. And the nice thing about that is it just goes right to the underside of it. And if this floor goes up, let me see. If I move level 1 up, that will be attached with it. If I want to undo that, I can click and go detach. But that's good. And then the last thing is I want this to be, let's just say, sitting on the ground for now. So let me set this as 0. And now if I go back to my section, it's sitting nicely right on top of my grade plane. Again, we don't have a foundation modeled, but for now, this does the trick. Going back to 3D, we have this sitting nice and clean on there. Cool. All right, so the next thing we need to start doing is curtain wall stuff here. Let's go back to level 1. I'm going to keep this visibility on for now. But actually, you know what? I'm going to take a little side detour and show you how to kind of start managing visibility a little bit better. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn off enable view properties. The problem with this is I can't see the element below, right? I think I can make this a foreground layer and I can see it, but this is good for working, right? This is not great for actually seeing what I've done to date. So what I like to do is I like to start setting up working models, working views, and final views, or plan views, or whatever you want to call them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call this level 1 working. It's an 1/8 inch, which I think is a good scale for now. And I'm going to make this what's called a view template. And what a view template does is it allows me to take that and apply it to multiple other views. And then therefore, the settings will carry over. They'll stay locked. I can change the template for all the views at the same time and they'll all update. So you can imagine if you have hundreds of plans in a really large project, if you want to change the line weight on the wall, you don't want to have to go through and change every view. You just want to be able to change it in one place and they'll all update. And that's what a view template does. So I'm going to have my level 1 working, and just to actually keep it cleaner, I'm going to call it working level 1. Just so they all kind of organize the same. And I'm going to go to View, View Templates, Create Template from Current View. And just for the sake of making sure I keep them all organized, I'm going to call it JB 1/8 inch working. Okay. I'm not going to edit any of this stuff. I can later if I want to, but I'm just going to click OK. And now I've got that set up. So if I go to my roof, I can come in here and go to View Template and just apply my JB 1/8 inch working. And now I've got my view template set up properly, matching that. Rename this working t.o.roof. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Ground. I'm going to make this working plan. There we go. I can turn that underlay off for now if I want to. So I don't, see that. That was good reference, and I can turn those on and off. They're independent of the view template. but I'm going to then again call this working ground. All right. Now I need finished plans because this is nice for me to be able to trace over, but I can't see really kind of what I've done and what I haven't. So just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to actually duplicate this view, and I'm going to just do that. Now I have this. Actually, for the sake of, again, I'll show you how to turn this off. I'm going to say duplicate with detailing, and this says working level 2. I'm going to rename this let's call it Pres level 1 for now. And again, you know what, let's just call it level 1 because we'll have working and then we'll just have our base. Now I don't want to see this here. I could make it a background layer again if I wanted, but I'm still seeing parts of it. It's really not the right way to do it. So what I can do is go into visibility graphics, and in my imported categories, I'm going to turn off Barcelona level 1. And I'm going to click OK, and now I don't see it anymore. So now I have a view template, which if I go back and I create a template from current view, I can call this JB 1/8 inch arc plan. So there's my architectural plan. So now I have my JB 1/8 inch working plan and my architectural plan. So I would duplicate all these as well. I'm going to duplicate this with detailing. I'm going to duplicate this with detailing. And I'm going to assign the arc plan to that. And I'm going to assign the arc plan to that. And I'm just going to rename these as ground and top of roof. So now I have my top of roof plan. Now it's still showing that. The reason is I've got to come into this view template here, go into, I think it's in imports, and I got to make sure all of this stuff is off in the view template. So before it was only showing me what was visible in that. I got to make sure all those are off. So now none of the CADs will show up in here. And you can set these views up in different places. You can use that method to set up elevations that are presentation versus working, and so on. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to go back into my working plan and I'm going to start putting in curtain walls. Okay, so here I have curtain wall across. I have a mullion there. And oh, this was a wall that's a 4-inch wall that I didn't edit. So I'm going to come back and change this to a 4-inch. Yeah, now it's good. We've got to start putting in curtain walls. So if I come into architecture and I go to wall and I go into, they have these curtain walls, right? I'm going to start by just putting one in, and then we're going to edit it to make it be what we want it to be. So I can click, draw this sort of on the center of that. And now we've got our curtain wall in there. One thing that you'll start to notice with some of this is that when the wall lines are thick, because what Revit does is it displays the print thickness. It's not like CAD where it's a super thin line. So you can start to get lost a little bit. If you click on this here, it actually will make everything more narrow. Now what's happening here is this offset, which is being dictated in the type. I'm sorry, the offset is here. Once we start adding mullions, we'll get this in the right place. Okay. All right, so we have our curtain system. I'm going to turn this back on for now, but we got to start getting some mullions in there. So I'm going to go to edit type, and you know what, the top of the level, all of this stuff actually came out by default. It remembered, so it's in a good spot relative to the other wall, so that's nice. But let's click on this, let's edit the type. We want to have an equal spacing of these, and what I'm going to do is, it's got one from there to there. I'm going to check this distance. This distance is like 6'9". So let's say 7, let's call it 7 feet maximum. I can click on here, I can edit the type. I want to create a vertical grid, which is going to be on a maximum spacing of 7 feet. And then my vertical mullion, my interior type is just going to be like, let's do a 1-inch square for now, and the borders are going to be 1-inch squares and 1-inch squares. And you know what? I think I should have duplicated this. Let's pretend I didn't. Let's pretend I did. I'm just going to rename it instead and call it Barca curtain. Oh, I spelled it wrong. BA Barcelona curtain. Okay, great. So I've got my vertical mullions. I don't think there's any horizontal, and so we're just going to keep it like that. And I'm actually going to get one that's pretty close to where it's supposed to be in the middle. I think what's happening is because of where it stops here and there. Well, yeah, see, so this should actually come into here. I'm going to turn off. I think I need to, this is a little trick, but I need to right click here and go to disallow join. Why is this not working? This is, again, standard Revit, like frustrating stuff of how it's not behaving how you want it to. There we go. So that's good. Okay. So now my spacing should be still not perfect, but again, I think it's because of where this sits versus that. I think because this wall's thicker, the modules don't line up perfectly, and I can show you how to fix that. The mullion is obviously not the exact right size, but for now, and in another lesson, we'll talk about how to customize those. But for now, we're just going to keep it how it is. Okay. Okay. So this is that parameter I was looking for before. This panel is set back because of the offset in the panel itself. So this is where curtain systems can get kind of tricky. The curtain wall itself has parameters, but then the individual mullion has parameters, and if I hit tab, the panel has parameters. So I'm actually going to edit the type of this. I don't want this. I want this offset to be 0. And I'm going to click OK. And it'll actually center it on those mullions like I wanted it to be before. So then I can take this center line of this and move this back so that it's centered on the wall. There we go. Finally, this here, to get this to the center, and again, this is just to kind of illustrate this. This has to move over. My first time showing you guys dimension. Let's call it 1 inch for the sake of just simplicity. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to go to my section, and I can see that mullion. and I can actually unpin that, click, or I can, sorry, I want to click in to get that grid line. I can unpin that, and I can make this 6'11", and it'll move it over. So now if I go back to my level 1 plan, or sorry, my level 1 working, it's right in the right spot. Okay, so I'm going to do one more curtain wall here so you guys can see how to add doors. So I'm going to right click on this, and I can actually go to create similar. This is another good trick, which just allows me to create obviously the same thing as I did before. Now I've got that. My mullion spacing looks pretty good, but I need to get a door in there. So what I'm going to do is this door, let's see what that dimension is. This dimension here is, let's call it 3'6" for the purposes of what we're doing today. I'm going to click on this. I don't like how this wall is blocking it, so what I'm going to do is create another section here. And I'm going to help you manage all these sections later because we don't want to have too many that are unused. But what I'm going to do is click on this curtain wall. Or sorry, I can go to architecture curtain grid, right? And I'm going to add one in here. And I'm going to click on this. And I'm going to make this 3'6". And then let's add one for the door across the header because it's not a full height door. So let's go to curtain grid. I want to just add one segment. I don't want to add all. If I do all, it'll go all the way across, which maybe that's the way it actually is, but for the purposes of today, we'll just call it that. I can click on this, that grid, and make this 7 feet. And then the last step to this is I'm going to click on this tab into this, and I'm actually going to change this to a door, which I don't think we have a curtain wall door here. This is a good side note. I'm going to go to, let's go to insert, load family. Oops, I don't know what load Autodesk family is. Let's try that. I think this is pretty new. So if we go into curtain wall panels, or let's go back, actually let's go to doors, door curtain wall single, load. I can click on this, and then I should be able to change this to a door curtain wall single glass. So if I go back to level 1, I've actually got a door in there now. So that's how you, let's go to level 1 working. It just happened to kind of be in the right place, but you can flip the orientation of it this way. So that's how you put doors in curtain walls. The next thing I'm going to show you guys is, so I would ask that you guys go in and you fill in all of the curtain walls, all in here. Let's see if you can figure this out. This is the same kind of method, but you could use either 2 single doors or you could use a double family. Let's see what you guys can do there. The last 2 things I'm going to show you in this is windows and doors that are a little bit more straightforward. Let's start with doors. Or you know what? Let's start with windows. There are no windows in this project, so I'm just going to do a real quick example. You just place them in walls, and it's nice because it cuts the void. Everything works, and then we can't see it because it's the working level, but if I go to level 1, you can see that window just comes in there. Those 2 arrows represent the exterior, so if I want to flip it, I can do that. But I can copy it. Windows are, obviously pretty common, but this building doesn't have any. And if you're doing a lot of curtain wall buildings and things like that, you probably won't be using windows. You might be using some interior windows, but normally you're not using these unless it's like a punch window in a wall. You wouldn't use this for something like a curtain wall. So I'll delete those. And finally, the door. So I'm going to go back to my working plan. And I'm going to add in a door here. So let me go into door. These are not the prettiest doors, but for the purposes of today, I'm just going to use one of these. I can put in a 36 by 48 door there. It looks like these doors are a little bit oversized. So let me just measure what's here. This is like a 3 foot, let's just call it a 3 foot 6 inch door again, because I think that's what we use for the curtain wall. I can edit this type, duplicate this. So let's call it 42 by 84. Make that width 3 foot 6 inches. Click OK. And I'll just align that to there. And again, it's not perfect, but for the purposes of today, it's good. Okay, the final thing I'm going to do is we don't have the pools cut out of the floor. There's a couple ways to do this. One is you can use what's called a void. So you can go to architecture, shaft, or vertical opening, and you can literally just draw. It's going to ask you the surface in which you want to draw it, so I can click on the floor, and then I can do this for where the pool is. And then if I go back, I now have that opening for the pool. I don't really like that, so I'm going to delete that opening, and I'm just going to come in and edit the footprint of this. So if I just, you can see this magenta line, that's the footprint of the floor. I'm going to click in here and do this. And what this does is it's good because it will like take the negative space. If you create a, an closed loop within a closed loop, it knows that you want to cut that out. So the last thing we'll do before we wrap this up is I'm going to add a foundation around those so I can see, we get that clean look in there for the pool. So let's put a underlay first floor. So now I can see my pools. I'm going to create a similar one of these. I'm going to flip it. Okay. Let's do the same thing over here. This one we'll just do right across. Looks like it actually goes like this. Now, these heights are obviously not right? Let me see if this works. Sometimes you can do MA, match. It only matches the type. It doesn't match the, it doesn't match the height. So I'm going to click all these and attach the top of this to there. And then I will click this and attach the top to there. So it's letting me know that it's attached to it, but it doesn't intersect it, and that's just because I needed to flip it. Now that I flipped it, it's good. All right, cool. So there's our walls, floors, and all that for Barcelona Pavilion. In the next video, we'll do roofs. We'll put some ceilings in, even though technically I don't think there would be a ceiling in this. A couple other things like stairs and basic fixtures and things like that.